We are back, and we ready to kill it 2026, the year where I cross over into the great land of 60, God willing, and maybe I just might be able to find a cure for this gray hair thing. Anyway, it's your boy, Professor G. Mark Gray. Thanks for hanging out with us. Again, a belated Happy New Year to you and all your family. And let's just hope we can survive the madness and get ready for great things on the other side. Because Lord knows there is some madness among us these days. But the beautiful part about sports is it gives you a respite from the silly, although sometimes silly comes to the fore. As always, you can follow me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. I'm basically all over the place in cyberspace at The Sports Groove. We've improved the quality of the equipment, and we are now ready to accept all comers. So just be ready. And tell your friends to download the mobile app here, Sports Rap Network, because we all we got. And, you know, I don't want to feel like I'm trolling people right now because I got plenty of stuff to talk about that's positive. You know, my boys in the U getting ready for that big matchup against Indiana come Thursday. And I think that the winner of that game is going to win the NAC. I've come to the realization that you probably got the best overall team in Indiana, and you probably got the best defense in the U. And really, can they put down the clamps on Fernando Mendoza and that ridiculous offense that Kirk Cignetti has? And I'm a Cignetti guy. If there's one football program at a basketball school, or at least what we thought was once a basketball school in Indiana, Kirk Cignetti has proven that he's there for the long haul, and you got to expect big things from Indiana henceforth and moving forward. You can make an argument that this is a year they've caught lightning in a bottle, but they look really, really good. So we'll talk plenty of stuff about the college football playoffs. Today, traditionally known, and, you know, as Black Monday, right? And if you're a person like me, every Monday's Black Monday, but that's just a topic for another conversation and why I probably need to keep my face covered from ice. But on Black Monday, first coach to get fired was a black coach in the NFL. In case you missed it, Raheem Morris, whose team won 4 straight games to end the season. Let's be clear about that. So from the realm of building momentum, Raheem Morris did that. You had a horrendous front office. You know, team president, idiot, talent evaluators were just awful. And it's like this. You expect Raheem Morris to go out and cook a good meal with bad produce, right? The Falcons never once figured out who their quarterback was. They overpaid for Kirk Cousins. Then they go out and they draft Michael Penix. Penix is up and down as rookies are. So you go back out, you get Kirk Cousins, somebody who you didn't want to pay, you overpay him, and nobody wins the games. But you give the ball back to Penix, you win 4 to finish the season. You don't make the playoffs. I thought it was a good, strong stretch. I'm not quite sure that you can get more out of a turnip like the Falcons. And the Falcons have been run like, you know, a turnip farmer in South Georgia somewhere. You know, why you don't want to buy no more of my turnips? Your turnips are bad, all right? And all Raheem Morris did was put a team in place that could win. So why do I bring that up? You could do a lot worse by replacing a coach with Raheem Morris, okay? Let's be clear of that. The guy plays defense. His locker room respects him. You just need a dynamic playmaker. And I don't want to start projecting here, but if Baltimore is looking in another direction, Raheem Morris might be a viable candidate. Real talk. He'd fit the dynamics of the city. I think he'd have probably a better working relationship with Lamar Jackson. And then he could take some of the racial fallout from the wannabe Jason Whitlock columnist at the Baltimore Sun. I'm just saying. But that's just one team's fate. But now, the only good thing about Baltimore missing that kick last night is it made me a couple dollars. Because I had Pittsburgh winning the North coming into the season. I thought Aaron Rodgers was going to get them over the hump. Their defense was what their defense was, just good enough. And despite not having DK Metcalf, 4.2 games down the stretch that you needed to win, they were able to sweep Baltimore. Just think about that for a second. If you're a Ravens fan and you look at how you were swept by Pittsburgh, to me, that's the story of the season right now. I mean, for everything else. Now, Myles Garrett gets a ceremonious sack, but I'm saying he's Cleveland, and Cleveland a hot mess. You have to just look at the treatment of Shador. They draft him in the 5th round. They have all these guys in front of him. They don't know what they're doing. Consequently, Kevin Stefanski got run. Now, there are a lot of people that are making excuses for Stefanski because he had a couple of 11-win seasons in 6 years. But for the most part, that team is a rudderless boat in the Ohio River. And what we got to start doing is understanding how it's not about the on-field team that wins in the NFL. It's the collaborative. You know, you got to have a strong front office. You know, you got to know how to pick your groceries before you can cook. To kind of paraphrase what Hall of Fame football coach Bill Parcells was telling people in the 80s when the NFC East was a beast instead of what is now the NFC least, because only one team makes the playoffs. And they're flying under the radar screen right now. Philly, you know, never before have I seen in quite some time defending Super Bowl champion, right, who wins their division. Now, the division was terrible largely because Jaden Daniels got hurt in Washington. The Giants were who the Giants were, and then the Cowboys are who we think they are. Show ponies, right? You know, little boy Dak, he's playing at the MVP level. When he wins a big game in December, it will be his first, all right? So I don't want to hear that anymore. So if you look at how everything is played out on the first Monday night where there is no football on TV, you can start breaking it down. And let's start with the AFC for a second, because it is really interesting and so wide open over there. You had the final spot in the AFC North that went to the Steelers. And again, Baltimore is out of the playoffs because they had a Billy Cundiff moment. And Raven fan will remember they were in an AFC championship game, I think it was 2005, when they had an opportunity to win with a field goal, and Billy Cundiff shanked it. Same thing happened in Baltimore last night. I'm telling you, karma is real. It just gets down like that. You got to deal with it. You know, my elders used to tell me God don't like ugly, and the Ravens are ugly. So Denver gets the number 1 seed. All roads through the playoffs go through Denver. And my question becomes with that, is Bo Nix ready for the next level? He got extra week to prepare, which I don't think is good for a quarterback. You really want to keep a young player when he's in a groove. They got to manage that, okay? And so now we're going to see really what kind of coach, championship leader that Sean Payton is right now. I mean, because you got a week off, a couple players can go away, take some time off, go to some warm weather, get a little treatment or whatever. How do you handle this week? That's going to be key. This is an inexperienced playoff team, and it's incumbent upon the coaching staff who's been through it to get them through it. I'm anxious to see if Bo Nix can handle the pressure of elevated levels of play as well as navigating through the week off. You know, the bye week can be a blessing and a curse. Yeah, it can help you get well, but if you rusty and off your game a little week, you know why they call it the bye week? Because you go bye-bye when you lose, and that's just how it is. So the Broncos up, you've got the Steelers who win the North, and as back doorway as possible, but you got to wonder, Mike Tomlin has to be March the Cat. He's got 9 lives. It's just amazing to watch how his team seems to always rally the troops for him when they're under duress. And we saw it with the help from some officials in Baltimore a little bit over a month ago when the game was kind of stolen from the Ravens. But then when given an opportunity to, reborn yourself, they get a big touchdown pass in the fourth quarter and literally steal the game from the Ravens. Mike Tomlin's something special. And I think the people in Pittsburgh who may be burned out from him are going to appreciate that in this playoff run. So elsewhere in the AFC, you got the Patriots, you got the number 2 seed. So that's kind of interesting. If we go with chalk, you'll have 2 young, new superstar quarterbacks kind of in a position now to take the mantle from Patrick Mahomes, because the Patriots and Drake May getting that number 2 seed have shown you that they got a rising star up under center. And with Mike Vrabel, they play defense. But it's not going to be easy, because Jacksonville is another team Liam Cohen has playing extremely well. And their defense is something that you can't look beyond anymore. Jacksonville set the tone by dominating Tennessee. Okay, I mean, they played like they were trying to send a message to the rest of the AFC. Okay, I don't know if anybody else got that message. I did. Mess around with Duval and find out. Because, hey, look, it's never really been about the roster and the way it's constructed in Jacksonville. Jacksonville's always had players. If you look at, like, you know, the days of Mark Brunell and Fred Taylor and Reggie Barlow, hey, a lot of people like living down there. Maurice Jones-Drew. So Jacksonville is not necessarily the hardest place to recruit players to come, believe it or not. Now, Jacksonville is not my favorite port of call by any stretch of the imagination, but if you're in the golf and that Florida lifestyle and you can handle living on the, quote, redneck Riviera, it's a great place. I think Jacksonville has turned the corner. This may not be their time to, in fact, get to the Super Bowl, but it will be their time to perhaps upset the apple cart and play on the second weekend of the playoffs. But these playoffs are going to be interesting. We're going to break down the NFC in a little bit. Effort in the track down. And this has been a very busy day. My source has been on the phone all day tracking down the latest on NFL moves and shaking. And this is a day where there's been quite some bit of shaking up in sideline positions, head coaches, and front offices. And this is where it all begins, you know. And here's something that the Raiders have been hearing, I don't know, I guess since the middle of October. As we count down to the draft, they're on the clock. Hate to be that way, Vegas. For the city that never sleeps, your football team is now officially on the clock. Anyway, it's your boy, Professor G. Mark Gray. Happy New Year's to you and yours. Hey, remember, it's OG Sports Rap on Sports Rap, the network. Download the app, because we all we got. Yo, what's the deal, boys and girls? We back at it. It is OG Sports Rap. That's right. Welcome inside the barbershop, you know, where you can walk right in, get yourself a, you know, adult beverage. People below the age of 18 are welcome, but you better be able to act like you know. Anyway, I'm Mark with a K, Gray with an A. Thanks for hanging out with us. Professor G is how you know me. OG Sports Rap here on the network as we count down to the semifinals of the college football playoffs. And make no mistake about it, I am all in with the U, the Miami Hurricanes, because, well, unless you guys are from a different generation and you don't know about the greatness of the U, well, we back in the national championship finals, although back then there were no national championship finals because we didn't have like a bracket. We didn't have a tournament that was jumping off. So, speaking of tournaments, how about the NFL's postseason tournament? And I'm not quite ready yet to break it down in its full entirety, but I will say this. You've heard me say this on 1,000,001 times, numerous occasions, and the whole bit. The best reality show on television is the National Football League. And it delivered on Monday night, last night. I got to give credit where credit is due. The Ravens and the Steelers delivered after what was somewhat of a real melancholy New Year's weekend where college football and the NFL got to figure itself out. Because, you know, when you're invading on the privacy of college football, and some of your games are, well, frankly, trash, you can't be trying to hold your better games hostage on the Saturday of the semifinals of the college football playoffs and expect to get any ratings. Okay? I know the primes and all the other streaming services are constantly looking for real world format, but you don't need to be dicking around with the NFL. I mean, there are those of us who have a voracious appetite for the National Football League, no matter who's playing. And you're interested, even more vested in when your team is playing, which brings me to mind, okay? And again, we got plenty of time to talk about the college football playoffs later in the program, the latest on the NBA, a little bit later on in the program, some HBCU news to talk about. That's right. I got to give Howard University credit for what they did from the standpoint of hiring a guy by the name of Ted White. Put it to you on paper. It's a great hire. All right. Here's a dude that played in the halcyon or the glorious days when they had ghetto, quote, turf on the field at Green Stadium in the nation's capital. So I like the notion that Howard University is hiring one of their own who's been a coordinator at the highest of levels. And we will talk about that a little bit later on, because there are a lot of HBCU haters that are out there right now, figuring that just because somebody has had to grind its way through the vetting process that is understaffed, underfunded, college football programs, Howard has one who has been to the other side. And there's a very big difference. When you're going to change the culture of a program, you have to bring somebody in from another culture. And that Ted White understands the Howard University culture, having gone there, having played there, having had to walk in the shoes of somebody who was one of the all-time greats, an HBCU Hall of Famer. What they did by hiring Ted White was probably the most prudent decision that I've heard of any school in intercollegiate athletics during this football offseason, quite frankly. You bring somebody in who went there, who played there, who had some success there, who knows what it takes to be there. Now, the question is, can Ted White, number one, raise money at Howard? Because let's be real, there's certain brands in HBCU sports, HBCU culture, just in the whole diaspora of HBCU. When a school like Howard University is solvent, when they're doing trend-setting things that go well beyond what's happening with the campus, then you have to respect how that grind turns into something more than just rep and a revenue stream. And what happens is the more visibility that you get these days, if you ask me, with a shallow group of students who are getting more shallow, I should say, each and every year, hey, when you got a compliant, competitive athletic program with its benchmark being football, I love the Ted White hire. All right, I'm going to go on the record for it, and there are going to be a lot of haters to see me. I'm at the Sports Groove 24/7, 365 on computer, smartphone, tablet, however you get your social media groove on. So we're hoping to get to the Howard quarterback or head football coach a little bit later on in the week. But back to the NFL for a second. Because any of you who saw what went down between the Ravens and the Steelers on Monday night have got to say, hey, no matter what side you were on the aisle last night, whether it was to see the Steelers hold off with all their legacy, and say what you want about Pittsburgh, they are a legacy franchise. Okay, when you can win 4 Super Bowls in like 6 years, you're in a different breed of level of success. There's so many layers to that. It's hard to really frame it in the proper verbiage when there is no precedent for what that franchise has done in the past. That being said, they got to figure out the direction that they want to go in right now. And I'm talking about the Steelers, because they got lucky against Baltimore on Monday night. Make no mistake about that. That was straight luck. Now, a lot of it has to do with the fact that, throughout the course of the season, Baltimore has not been able to make enough plays. This notion that Todd Monken is the guy when he's not. John Harbaugh trying to floss, for lack of a better term. And for those of you who are cool impaired, flossing means you're trying to state yourself as something that you're not, which brings me back to Harbaugh and the karma that your coach can bring upon your team. And there's not going to be ne'er reporter. There's not going to be any players who will go on the record. But there's a certain vibe that you give off when, well, for lack of a better term, you're kind of smarmy. Now, I don't know how I would truly, if for purposes of Merriam-Webster's dictionary, I don't know how I would define it. But whatever smarmy is, John Harbaugh, the coach of the Baltimore Ravens, is indeed, at the very least, smarmy. And there's no way that he can be a leader of men in a town like Baltimore that's facing the wrath of the president only because they have a black mayor. So you have this, white, arrogant coach in John Harbaugh who thinks he's done the city a solid, right, by winning them a championship. And now there's nothing that's working out for him. Nothing at all. He's got arguably the most dynamic player in the NFL right now in Lamar Jackson. Let's just break that down for a second. Lamar does not come along a dime a dozen. You're not going to go into any transfer portal and pull out a guy like Lamar Jackson. So you have to start scrutinizing John Harbaugh for the parts that are around Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson is not necessarily in the same shoes that Shedeur Sanders is in, but when you look at things that are happening with the Ravens, and you look at how they find themselves on the outside looking in when most people thought that they were an automatic playoff team coming into the season in the latter stages of 2025, and it didn't work out. Didn't work out at all. So here we are. Where does Baltimore go? I'm going to put it out there on blast right now. If you're a fan of the Ravens, is it time for Harbaugh to go? Or, and let me tell you something, you probably could fleece the top 2 or 3 picks, conservatively speaking, for 5 years if you make the move by trading Lamar Jackson to a team who probably gets better because of the energy that he brings in and not having to carry the weight of the next level of energy that people are lining up to crush him on. And that's what they seem like they're doing to me. They seem like they've been waiting for the moment. And again, I've got my problems with Lamar Jackson. And it's only because being an OG, let me be clear about this. I saw Doug Williams handle the moment. I saw James Harris handle the moment. I've seen too many black guys up under center with far greater challenges that are in front of them, which are bigger than any kind of pressure that the offensive line and blitzing linebackers can ever bring up to you. And I think what we're looking at right now is I don't think Lamar Jackson has been kind of trained to be a leader. He's been forced into it, but he hasn't done it yet. And some people are built to it, some people are not. But in the case of the Ravens this year, I think the way that their season ended on Monday Night Football had a lot to do with John Harbaugh and the way he addressed the local Baltimore media after President Trump had basically called his city a hellhole. And you can't get away with backing somebody that called your hometown and their fans a hellhole and expect to get the karma to work out for you when you're trying to save your season. Anyway, that's what went down on Sunday Night Football, boys and girls. I'm anxious to get your thoughts. Hit me up at the Sports Groove. That's on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. If you want to call me out, I would love for you to do it, and I can put it on blast. I may not always be right, but rare if ever I'm wrong. It is the OG Mark Gray. It is OG Sports Radio on the network. Friends, fellow, and country folks, welcome to 2026. That's right, this historic landmark year where, God willing, your boy will transition into year number 60 of life on the planet. And maybe just the Miami Hurricanes will be the reigning national champions by the time we get to May. It's your boy, Professor G. Mark Gray. Thanks for hanging out with us. Glad to be back with you for another edition and another year of OG Sports Rap here on the network. Hey, look, we got plenty of NFL stuff to get to down the line, okay? And we will, okay, because the playoffs will be starting this weekend, but given that the college football playoffs are already in place, and you look at what has happened to this point, there are layers to the college football playoffs. I will stand corrected, can now no longer say that the two best teams in college football this year were Indiana and Ohio State. The way that the University of Miami dominated, I mean, just absolutely straight poleaxed Alabama was just ridiculous. I mean, that was just one of those moments in time that just happens. And Miami set the tone with their defense. I'm trying not to be, and if you follow me on social media, you do know I am the Canes fanboy. So I'm looking at it right now. And again, I've said this weeks gone by. The Canes are playing defense like the Ravens did in 2000. And if they continue to play that defense, they should win the national championship. But you've got Indiana, who has the look of the best team in the country right now. They've already got the best player in Fernando Mendoza, right, the quarterback. And their line is mauling people. They got receivers that are going to play on Sundays next year. I mean, my goodness. And their coach is, we can officially call Kirk Cignetti a badass. And you can look at him, you know, he just looked like a badass. I would love to be a player in his locker room to hear his speech because he gives his team swag. But the beautiful part about Mario Cristobal is that he plays the same game, okay? And let's be clear about something, okay? And I think I most misspoke earlier. It was Miami who beat Ohio State in the Cotton Bowl. So as fate would have it, Miami's going to have to go through you're going to go Big Ten, SEC, and then more than likely have to be the Big Ten team repping for the ACC. And I think that the way that things have broken down for the U right now as it relates to having to play Ole Miss, I mean, let's be clear. Now, I didn't think Ole Miss was going to win. I didn't think Charlie Weiss's kid was going to be able to pull it off, but he did. So you put everything into the mix right now, and there's so much swirling around Ole Miss. You know, they only got a week to deal with the distractions this time. You got the transfer portal who has started already, and don't get me started with the madness of who controls the transfer portal window. Is that an NCAA thing, or should that be something that's regulated by the college football playoffs? Because Lord knows, we know damn well the NCAA can't fix or monitor or administrate anything. So you got to fix the way that you deal with this portal situation. And if it's going to be a private entity and the college football playoffs is the major culprit, you got to do something about that. You got to do something about that now. You're taking away from the competitiveness of the following season when you don't give teams a chance to work the portal until after the tournament. Why do you have to get portal stuff done in the midst of the tournament? I mean, really, it makes no sense. And again, I'm not a brain surgeon. I don't try to play one on the radio, but damn, this is common sense. If your recruiting process, sort of like, you know, going to the grocery store and replenishing your goods, if you can afford them these days, but that's a topic for another show. Still, the transfer portal and, you know, signing day, all that kind of stuff, or how you restock the shelves. The cupboard goes bare quicker now because folks are leaving and other opportunities to work out better for them, both personally and financially. You can't hate on that. You know, it was another unregulated system that the NCAA, turned a blind eye to, and here where we are. You got to figure out a way to make it work. So with all that being said, if you're a fan of Miami, and I'm not going to lie, I am, I look at the matchup against an Ole Miss team that's going to be really feeling good about itself and then have the buzz killed because a lot of their staffers are supposed to be at LSU now working with the former head coach. But Ole Miss won the game. And Trinidad Hubbard has become the star of the playoffs. And just as much as I feel Miami has the mojo, you know, having slayed the Ohio State demon, I can't say I don't believe that Ole Miss may have an intangible of just having an edge. Now, the distraction is the fact that you got only a week to prepare, right? This is a Thursday night game. It's in Arizona, so it's another time zone over for them. You got to get travel, you got to get acclimated, then you got to practice. What's up with the staff? That's a really interesting, and you can talk all you want about how they settled in, they figured some stuff out, yada, yada. But teams are creatures of habit. They get into routines. There is no routine and there's no playbook for what's going on this week. I think that gives Miami more than a puncher's chance to finish that because the defense that they're playing is a lot tougher to prepare for when your routine is scrambled. So I really like Miami again. I think Miami will play for the national championship, and I think they'll play against Indiana. And that could be the matchup of life. You know, I can really see that because Indiana rolled Alabama to the point that even now it was the worst loss in the history of Alabama postseason. But y'all got to get off of that Bear Bryant, Nick Saban nonsense. It's a new world order out here, y'all. All right. Alabama ain't going to dominate the way that they once dominated. It's just not going to happen. I don't foresee any team dominating like it is right now because of these portal windows that we're talking about, right? And then you're talking about all of these other distractions, you know, NIL money, the haves, the have-nots. You know, if you ain't writing big checks, you can't play the NIL game, boys and girls. And if your school don't have people who are looking to drop, you know, 30, 40 million annually, there could be a problem. Just saying. So layers have to be worked out. But as it stands for the 2026 college football national champion, or I guess it would be 2025, Alabama learned something about themselves. Don't nobody care about your blue blood in the SEC. It's a new world order. And I'm for change. And I tell you what else I thought was impressive. Oregon, hey, man, look, don't sleep on them. Oregon is not going to go out quietly Friday night against Indiana. We'll break down the specifics of this game as we get down closer to it. But with the four teams that are remaining here in the college football Final Four, and we need to start addressing it in the same fashion that we look at the NCAA tournament, because for men's basketball and women's basketball in particular, I mean, this is a hell of a Final Four. Now, you've had your upsets, okay? It's apparently with enough of a sample size to show you that having a bye week going into the tournament, even though you get the chance to rest and recover, hadn't worked out for a lot of teams. I mean, let's just be clear. There is something to be said for having had to play a game. And sometimes when you're gifted and you get a top 4 seed, like Texas Tech did, Oregon comes in at number 5, and they took you to school. I mean, and the only top seed to really advance with a bye week was Indiana, which just tells you about the badass of Kirk Cignetti. I want to see Indiana and Miami. They are mirror images of each other. And I tell you who else I did like to see. I like this kid Trinidad Hubbard, the quarterback from Ole Miss. Just ridiculous. I mean, he dropping dimes on the run. I was like, now, wait a minute. Why wasn't this guy a part of the Heisman Trophy invite crew? Now, it took him till like the last month of the season to find his legs. But damn, when he found them, it would be good. And now, one mitigating factor for Indiana, if they do win and get to the national championship game and they play Miami, that's a home game in Miami. And that would change the dynamics, because if you've been watching the promos on the website with me and Jeff Fox, my guy in Miami, you'll know that the town is as hot for the Canes as they would be if the Dolphins or the Heat, or in their case, the Panthers, the hockey team, was competing for the title. And it's that big down there right now. It's personal. They figure like this is our time to get one back. So after they shocked Ohio State in the Cotton Bowl, they're going to be feeling good about themselves in the Fiesta Bowl. So I'm just wondering, I don't know if they went back home and they're going back out to Arizona, because it would have made a lot more sense for them to go from Dallas to Tempe and then fly back after the semifinals. But, you know, that's neither here nor there. But this has been a hell of a college football playoff. I'm so into the college football playoffs. It is a cool thing. I don't think even the adults in the room are going to be able to screw this format up, because we got exciting games. Now, I tell you what, again, they ought to figure out a way to create the same type of template using the rest of the remaining bowls and turn that into some kind of NIT like they do in basketball. Hey, you weren't invited to the big one, but you can take solace that you might have been the best of the not invited and build you some momentum with a couple of games during the off season that will help make you better moving forward. And I'm not even saying, you know, and you got to put the higher tier bowl games in there. You get about six higher tiered bowl games, you know, probably sell a lot more Frosted Flakes and Pop-Tarts, right? When do we get to the point where college football games were won in postseason at a bowl game and your reward is to eat a Pop-Tart, right? Or some Cheez-Its. Your coach gets dunked with Cheez-Its. Sometime a little bit later on this evening, we got to talk about bad bowl game traditions. None worse, however, than the Duke's Mayonnaise Bowl. Because let's be real for a second. Do you really want to get dumped after winning a game with some mayonnaise? That's got to be really disgusting and hard to wash out. Anyway, we are just beginning to start here as the barbershop is now open. Yes, it is, boys and girls. So come on in, grab yourself a cold one, sit down, get ready to take a trim, and you'll leave here smarter than when you first came in. It's your boy, Professor G, Mark Gregg. It's OG Sports Rap on the network. I got Lloyd Vance joins us right now as we go inside the NFL's postseason tournament. Certainly, I tell you what, Lloyd, you couldn't have asked for a better Week 18 than we had in the National Football League. Even right down to the missed kick in Pittsburgh sent the Ravens home. And I guess I'll start right there. Big picture in the AFC. You look at Pittsburgh. I had them winning the North, believe it or not, coming into the season. But I look at the way that Baltimore kind of blew those two games with them. So let's start first off with the Steelers. What do you make of their chances to make a deep run in the playoffs?
It would be nice for Pittsburgh Steelers fans if they could get that opportunity. Mark, it's been so long since they had a playoff win, since about 2015. So, you know, consistency of Mike Tomlin's been there in terms of putting these playoff teams together, but they have to have some playoff success. So to answer your question in a long way, it's going to be tough for them. You know, they're a team that their defense is middle of the road. It's not what it used to be in terms of teeth and sacking the quarterback. Aaron Rodgers doing a nice job. They're running the football. Maybe DK Metcalf coming back will kind of spur this team, but they're going to have a home game, and we'll see how they do.
Okay. Now, in keeping with the, I guess, new energy of the AFC right now, it was doom and gloom. There was going to be no Patrick Mahomes in the playoffs. There's not going to be a Joe Burrow in the playoffs. The elite level, old school, if you will, and it's hard to believe we're talking about them as old school quarterbacks, but with the OGs gone, you got, Drake May in New England, Bo Nix in Denver, Trevor Lawrence in Jacksonville, C.J. Stroud in Houston. Have we now officially entered the changing of the guard in the AFC as it relates to the quarterback position? And which is one of the young players do you think is really ready to handle that mantle? Because it's out there wide open in that conference.
Mark, you know, it reminds me a lot of the 2008 season. Tom Brady goes out and you're having these young guys. It's time for them to step up. No Patrick Mahomes, and it may be their time. So, you know, this is a situation where other than Josh Allen and C.J. Stroud, who've been there before, you know, it's all new to these quarterbacks. So Drake May's played so well this season, Mark. I guess if you're going to say someone's going to step up at the quarterback position and the team seems like they're ready to go, I'd say it's the Patriots in terms of Drake May. They have the running game. You saw Stevenson this week put up a great performance with 3 touchdowns. They have Henderson in the bullpen. Their running game's there. Veteran head coach. So, yeah, I'm looking for the Patriots to make some noise here, and Drake May too. So they're the number 2 seed, and we'll see how they do.
Lloyd Vance is with us right now, our NFL insider, as we break down the NFL tournament. Let's be clear. It gets underway this week. Is the bye week a blessing or a curse, in your opinion, these days? Because, I mean, you got teams like Pittsburgh seemingly has got their momentum back. And if I'm Pittsburgh, I like the notion that I got to play again this week. But you have a whole bunch of old dudes on that team. You know what I'm saying? And they could use the week off in a week in Puerto Rico or Cabo or something. What about that age factor in the AFC? It's a bunch of over-the-hill gang players, to use an old-school Washington term. Is it really time for a changing of the guard, or do you think the old school will hold on?
I think, in terms of getting a bye, teams, they should try to play their guys. Mark, you saw that kind of backfire for the Philadelphia Eagles this week, where they probably should have played and they lost that number 2 seed. As long as it's not somebody that gets hurt and season ender, everyone's banged up this time of year. So you want to be sharp going into the playoffs. And I've seen too many times where a team has sat on the side and then they kind of come in flat-footed. Just think about last season. I mean, the Commanders blew the doors off of the Detroit Lions in Detroit in their own stadium. And why not be sharp going into the playoffs? So it's going to be fun to see who's going to jump out of the mix here, because as you're saying, there's just so many open opportunities, and there's not that juggernaut team sitting out there.
Lloyd Vance with us, our NFL's insider, as we break down the NFL's postseason tournament. All right, now I want to switch to the NFC, where the mighty Seattle Seahawks and Mike McDonald are the number 1 seed in that conference. And you've been to Seattle. You know how it is. That's a real tricky place to play. It's colder than people give it credit for. The weather is a lot nastier in many instances, certainly in January. How tough do you think it will be for the Seahawks to be outed at home in the NFC, given that they've got the recipe for postseason football? They run the ball, they bludgeon people, they're efficient at the quarterback position, and that Legion of Boom, it may not be called that, but they still are they're bringing the noise, if you will. What do you think about Seattle's chances to win the NFC, especially since they got home field throughout?
No, you got to factor that in, Mark. And of course, everybody's going to talk about, there's a new pope, and they always remember how Seattle's made it to the Super Bowl when that changed the card there. But this team has some physicality, Mark. They showed it just the other night against the Niners and winning the division number 1 seed. They ran for 180 yards and over 4 yards a carry in that game. And they have their 2-headed monster in the backfield. You have Kenneth Walker, Charbonnet out there, and then you have JSN and the key obviously is going to be Sam Darnold. He's been on so many teams, and people question whether he was that guy, that high draft pick and kind of a bust. But this is his chance to remove that label. So Seattle's a very dangerous team, and I really like what McDonald's doing with that defense in terms of Reek Wolin and Leonard Williams and Ernest Jones IV. I mean, they got playmakers all over that defense. So yeah, as you said, they can run the football and they can play good defense. They have a good chance to make the Super Bowl.
Boy, it looks like Baltimore let their next coach get away. They got to be ruining the day that McDonald left the castle. And I do kind of want to jump back and talk about the Baltimore situation right now. As we speak, it's still in flux. We haven't heard anything about John Harbaugh's job security, but clearly there's something off in Baltimore. Who takes the fall? Zach Orr, John Harbaugh, the front office? What would you make of what seems to be an underlying mess in Charm City?
They've always been in concert together all these years. Eric DeCosta, the general manager, you have Steve Bisciotti, the owner, DeCosta, the president, and then Harbaugh and Lamar Jackson on the field. It's somebody is going to have to go. And I'm not buying into this whole narrative that Lamar Jackson is going to be jettisoned, and he has a no trade clause, so they'll have him on the team. But John Harbaugh, Bisciotti is definitely looking at him in terms of, all right, has he been there too long? But they played so well in Pittsburgh. It's a situation where I just kind of think they're going to try to run this thing back one more time to the consternation of a lot of people in Baltimore. I know they want to have a change, particularly Harbaugh has probably been there too long, but I think they're going to probably run this thing back. But yeah, that missing that kick, man, they sent a whole new trajectory for this organization.
It almost takes me back to the Billy Cundiff thing back in the day. Remember when he had the AFC championship on his foot? I believe it was either in Denver or Pittsburgh, and he had a chance to walk it off. And what happened was he ended up walking off away from the franchise then there. It's a really interesting quandary that you look at in Baltimore, one of the elite franchises that continues to grossly underachieve on the field. I just don't know what to make of that anymore. I mean, can a guy actually wear out his welcome, if you will?
He can. And it's a whole ownership thing. And I've heard all along that Bisciotti is such a fan of Harbaugh. He delivered that Super Bowl. He won a Super Bowl. And once you have that in your back pocket, you kind of have that pedigree. And, we're here where I am in Philadelphia. It's a different story. Jeffrey Lurie, their owner, was very impatient. Even after Doug Peterson won a championship, he kicked him out the door. But I'm not seeing that happen here. And I think it's going to be up to Harbaugh whether he wants to take a break, maybe do something else. But he's been there so long, I think since 2008, that he's kind of earned his opportunity. And then Lamar Jackson, he early on in that game, Mark, I was like, oh man, he's playing his way out the door, but he stepped it up in the fourth quarter, made some big time throws, started using his legs, and you showed that he wanted to will this team to victory. So I think Zach Orr, as you said, maybe he's the defense. They point the finger at the defense that they need to fix that and change coordinators there. But yeah, I think you'll have Harbaugh back. You'll have Lamar Jackson back. And then they'll try to get better in the draft with that defense.
Lloyd, stick with us. Coming back on the other side, we're going to comprehensively break down some more stuff as we go inside the NFL playoffs with our NFL insider, Lloyd Vance. You keep it locked right here. It's your boy, Professor G, on OG Sports Rap on the network. Remember, we all we got. In 3, 2, 1. I continue. NFL insider Lloyd Vance joins us right now. It's the most wonderful time of the year as you get ready for the NFL playoffs. But I want to ask you something about the college football playoffs right now. And in particular, we're seeing some quarterbacks that are playing themselves, it would appear to me, up draft boards. And I think when I look at the kid Fernando Mendoza, the kid that won the Heisman Trophy from Indiana, I happened to see him live when they bludgeoned Maryland. And I left that game seeing a guy that does everything. He's athletic. He can make all the passes. He's a smart guy, knows how to get in there. Is he the number one pick in the draft? Or what's the deal? Because you got a whole cavalcade of quarterbacks that look like they're ready, who are really performing real well in these college football playoffs.
Mark, I think it's going to be Mendoza in terms of quarterbacks. A lot of the other quarterbacks are coming back to school. I think the NIL situation and the portal has something to do with that, where these guys can jump around and, help themselves out in their draft stock while also making some money. So I think Mendoza's coming out. Moore has done a nice job for Oregon, as you were talking about. I think he's really moved himself up some boards. He's going to get some opportunities. I think Chambliss, though, from Ole Miss, he'll probably go back to school. But, man, he really showed a lot of dual threat ability coming there in Ole Miss, and he stepped in a situation. Let's face it, he wasn't a starter to start the season, and he's done a great job. Now, getting back to Mendoza, yeah, he can make every throw. He's great leadership, veteran guy. A lot of people are comparing him to Andrew Luck, but I also see Joey Harrington. I don't know if you remember him coming out of Oregon. Wow. This kid, smart, cerebral, had all the, intangibles and everything, but he didn't have that killer instinct. And sometimes I just wonder about that Mendoza. Is he going to be able to step into the NFL, beat a locker room? And particularly if he ends up with the Raiders, the Raiders are a dysfunctional situation, and it'd be interesting to see how all that works out. So the Raiders got the number one pick. The Jets, who are awful, they need a quarterback too. But it's not one of those classes, this quarterback group, where you're like, okay, there's 5 guys, like from a couple years ago with Caleb Williams and that group, where you said, okay, they can come in and start right away. So I think it'll be Mendoza and possibly maybe 1 or 2 other guys in the first round.
I agree with Lloyd right there. Diego Mendoza may be a unfinished body of work, but when you start looking at his upside, he to me is the guy. Although when you start looking at the eye candy test, boy, the kid from Ole Miss, Trinidad Chambliss is something special, and you can't put a price on the skill set that he brings to the table. Those are just a few of the quarterbacks that we will be looking at as we continue our conversation with our NFL insider, Lloyd Vance. And we got plenty of stuff to get to with Lloyd, including this could be the draft that is talked about in history as the one that opens the doors for the Hispanic quarterback. Remember we were talking about the black quarterback about 40 years ago? Could be the Hispanic time. All that's coming up next as OG Sports Rap continues. It's your boy Professor G on the network. We continue to move it along here, OG Sports Rap, as we kick off another season, and I continue my conversation with Lloyd Vance, our NFL insider. And the thing about the college football playoffs and the way that they come along right now is that they really do give you a window into the soul of not only the draft picks, but the future stars of the NFL. And this would appear to be as good a quarterback draft as we've seen in quite some time. Now, that's not to say there's going to be a Patrick Mahomes, Joe Burrow, Lamar Jackson type in this draft, but you might be able to find some guys who can play in a major way. And so as we continued my conversation with Lloyd Vance, one of the players that is a really interesting person plays at a school that's not necessarily a quarterback factory at Alabama. What the worldwide leader is saying and how their cavalcade of experts, seems like that kid from Alabama, was it Ty Simpson, seems to be garnering a lot of attention. And when I see him, I don't necessarily see it. You know what I'm saying? You can't really define what it is, but you know it when you see it. And I see an efficient, great quarterback in a phenomenal system that's able to do everything that the system requires in order for the team to be successful. I'm just wondering, how do you see his skill set translating to the next level?
I agree with you in terms of Ty Simpson. He's a system guy in college. You know, he has a lot of good pieces around him. You know, there's been so many Alabama quarterbacks. You're like, okay, was it everybody around? You know, Mac Jones in particular, you know, he came into the National Football League with that high grade, moved up a lot of boards based on his college resume. And let's face it, you know, it's easier when you have a bunch of five stars around him. So Ty Simpson, I'm kind of getting that same feeling about him. He may be overdrafted, and then he comes in a situation. Now, maybe the kid proves me wrong, but yeah, I just don't see him at this point being a guy that's going to come in day one and change the franchise's trajectory.
How about a guy like and he's got a black eye in terms of his reputation. Diego Pavia, the quarterback from Vanderbilt. You look at his physical tools. I think he's probably right up there with the elite guys, but the edge that he plays with, some of his off the field antics, which is going to be to his greater demise, his off season antics, or are we talking about a guy who slips or rises in the draft? Because he got physical tools that are off the chart.
Yeah, he's one of those dual threat guys. He can move around the pocket, makes plays, but, you know, he's kind of on the shorter side, Mark. So a lot of people are going to kind of question that. You know, this whole draft process, I call picking warts. They're kind of going to go to the combine, measure all these young men and see about him. And he's going to have to do better in the interview room. That's going to be big, Mark. They're going to ask him about, you know, is he a partier? Is he, you know, he said he emulated Johnny Manziel. It's not the best.
That's the reference.
You know, exactly. NFL guys do not want to hear that name in a conversation talking about a franchise quarterback. So I think he does have some skills, but I think he's more probably a second, third round guy or later draft, not a first round sure thing. It's going to be interesting to see how this shakes out in the post, you know, championship process at all these all-star games and in the combine and at the Senior Bowl. And it'll kind of shake out. But I think right now you got Mendoza, you got Moore, and then we'll see how it goes from there.
All right. Now, here's some Regency bias going on here. I'm a diehard U fan, and it's been a tough half century for me being a fan of the Hurricanes. The defense is back. I haven't seen the defense down there since they had like Jerome Brown and Dan Stubbs and Russell Merrill and all those dudes down there. What do you make of the amount of talent defensively with Miami? How many of those guys do you think come off the draft board, say, on the first night?
First of all, done a great job in terms of rebuilding that program, Mark. I mean, I could see, this is not that, 2001 squad, if I remember, with
With
all
Ed
those guys,
Reed,
Ed
Ray,
Reed
and
and
all
Sean
them.
Taylor and all
Yeah.
those guys. I mean, there were so many first rounders in that group, but I see at least four guys coming out of this group and kind of stepping into National Football League. And this defense has carried them so well, this season in terms of Miami. And, they got a new quarterback in there, but they've just stayed the course. And they're surprising a lot of teams. Not the best ACC season, but they've come into the postseason. They put their head down. They're going to work.
So how much do you think in this new world order of college football playoffs, how does that help draft stock? Normally back in the day when we grew up, you have one postseason bowl game. Now you got at least to win 3 if you get a bye in order to win. You get extra time and big pressure moments. Do you think that the college football postseason moving forward will have a greater impact on talent evaluation than the entire body of work of the regular season?
I think it can enhance it, Mark. Some guys will step forward, like Cardale Jones back in the day with Ohio State. He played himself into a high-round draft pick in these postseason games. But the interesting thing is some of these young men are saying, I'm not going to play in these postseason games. I'm kind of going to get ready for the draft. And if they know their stock's pretty high, kind of like Micah Parsons did so many years ago for the Penn State and then going to Dallas Cowboys, that he kind of did so. But I think it can't hurt being on a national stage. And I like that all these smaller schools and teams that may have had 1 loss, 2 losses are getting a chance to actually play for a championship. We saw too often back in our day where you may have an undefeated team or a team that slipped early in the season and everything was going from there.
Lloyd Vance, our NFL insider, with us as we break down both the talent coming out of the college football playoffs and the NFL's second season, which is set to get underway this weekend. I'm trying to get a feel for it, and I'm going to put you on the spot. Who do you like coming out of the AFC and NFC? Because I haven't figured it out.
Crazy. My preseason pick, the Eagles versus the Bills, is still alive, but Mark, I just don't see that happening at this point.
So which one of those teams is most vulnerable in your opinion?
That's a good one because, the Bills at the 6th seed, they're going to have to go on the road, but they have the pieces in place with Josh Allen. Their defense is starting to get a little bit healthier. They can run the football with Cook. So they're in a good situation. I think the Eagles are they're still trying to find their identity. They've had too many games where in the second half, they're not passing the ball with efficiency. We talked about that whole situation with Tulo and his play calling. So a lot of question marks with Philadelphia Eagles, and they're going to play the Niners coming up into Philadelphia, and that is not a pushover game. Christian McCaffrey's played pretty well against them. Yes, the Niners are beat up, and the Eagles are a favorite, but they cannot look past them. And then we talked about how the Eagles, they could have been that 2nd seed. Now they're probably going to have to go on the road if they're able to beat the Niners. So right now, even though the Bills are 6th, I think they can go play the Jacksonville pretty well, and then they can go on the road from there. So they have that MVP-type quarterback, and both teams, the Eagles as well, they have the guy that's already been there. So that's a good situation, whereas you have a lot of these younger quarterbacks, so you just don't know what you're going to get from.
Definitely a changing of the guard for sure, because you look at these playoffs, this is going to be like the coming out party. I don't think we've seen something like that for about 6-7 years when Mahomes and Joe Burrow and that crew came in. To me, where you had those 2 guys, and Josh Allen was a part of that crew too. You look at this ascending group of young quarterbacks, and it speaks a lot from a historical perspective, and I'm sure you'll understand this, being the historian that you are, where we lauded 15, 20 years ago the influence of the African-American, Black American quarterback. Now we're seeing Latino quarterbacks. Isn't it crazy? I mean, I never thought I would see, because I always thought my Hispanic friends were gravitating towards baseball, and now this influx of Hispanic players, and it really kind of personifies a leveling of the playing field that was done by the Black American quarterbacks that seemingly makes it easier for the establishment to be more palatable to a minority under center.
It is more, I was just reading a historical book talking about all this, how that in the past, the African-American quarterback in particularly was not given an opportunity because, the thinking man positions, it was just ridiculous. Yeah, we're way past this point, and it's good that conversation's not there anymore. And the Trailblazers, like James Shaq Harris, Doug Williams. I mean, these guys did a great job in terms of paving the road for these guys. Randall Cunningham, Donovan McNabb, a guy that I covered.
Warren Moon.
Warren Moon. I mean, and we're going to see. We're going to see who's going to step forward with the opportunity here. And C.J. Stroud is in the mix. He's a good young quarterback, just kind of inconsistent there. Jordan Love, and then obviously the man that gets no respect right here in Philadelphia, where I am, Jalen Hurts. I mean, he won a Super Bowl MVP, and everybody's saying, can he get it done? So minority quarterbacks still proving themselves, but they're right there head and shoulders with everybody else. And it's going to be a fun postseason, whether it's college with Mendoza and those guys or the NFL playoffs.
If I could give Nick Sirianni a piece of advice, I think he needs to start giving the middle finger to his critics up there in Philadelphia, quite frankly. To me, he's second-guessing himself, and it just appears to me that he's letting the outside noise affect him. And at some level, when you're a Super Bowl champion coach, you can tell, somebody to put their lips on where there's a crack. You know what I'm saying? Why is that not his demeanor? I mean, because he seems like a nice guy. I like the guy. I hate he's killing me in my division, but he just doesn't seem to wear the fact that he's a world champion coach without hearing the outside noise.
Well, he tries to appease a lot of people, and the first guy maybe grates some folks wrongly. But as you said, he got it done. He won on the biggest stage. He's been to 2 Super Bowls, lost one. A lot of these coaches who they're saying geniuses, et cetera, they haven't even, been to one or won one. So it's a situation where, he's going to have to step forward in these playoffs. And the Eagles are a veteran team, defending Super Bowl champions. A lot of people aren't talking about that. The defense is coming along at the right time. They're doing a good job in terms of Vic Fangio, the defensive coordinators, putting those guys in good positions. They had Phillips come over from Miami, and he's really helped solidify that group. So the Eagles, they can run the ball, and they've got to make sure they don't get too pass happy. So Sirianni, Patullo, it's on them. And as you said, it's pretty open. They did lose Chicago earlier. I'm going to be interested to see if those teams lock orange again.
Guy Lloyd Vance breaking it down as scientifically as he certainly can. And I did want to follow up on what we were talking about with how this is a big year when you start thinking about Mendoza at Indiana. You start thinking of Diego Pavia, a talented quarterback at Vanderbilt, but just a little bit of a loose cannon. Nonetheless, I think that we can't be at this moment on the 5th day of 2026 after the death of our Lord, if you will, by not recognizing this historic moment that is probably going to be, painted over or glossed over by history. This could be what we're entering right now, a golden era of Hispanic quarterbacks. And had it not been for the struggles of the Black American quarterback, I don't think we would be seeing these quarterbacks of color, ladies and gentlemen, who are now putting their footprint or their stamp on the league. What does that mean moving forward? I think it's healthy because the more players that you get from more backgrounds, the better your league is. And this is one of those times where I hope the NFL embraces diversity and isn't intimidated, quite frankly, by the government. It's your boy, Professor G, giving government name Mark Gray. I spell it Mark with a K, Gray with an A. It's OG Sports Rap on the network. And I got a beef with the car repairs I got the other day. That's on the other side next. OG Sports Radio continues. It's your boy, Professor G, from our virtual barbershop where we're handing out great cuts. I'm telling you, man, you leave this shop and your hair is lined up and so is your mind, all right? So we're glad to have you here as you sit in for another trim. I encourage you to follow me on social media at The Sports Groove. That would be 24/7, 365 on a computer, smartphone, tablet, however you get your social media groove on. You can find me on TikTok. You can find me on Instagram. You can find me on YouTube. And for those of you professional souls who want to talk some business, you can follow me on LinkedIn too. All right? I don't plan to go anywhere as we hit the road to do some special things this year on the network. And remember, we all we got, all right? That's more than just a phrase around here. The time has come for us to rally the troops, take our space back, right? And, straddle up for what figures to be a great year. The market will correct on this year. I'm feeling good about that. Not necessarily feeling good about the way it started with an attack on another nation. I mean, what's going on? The way I look at it right now, I think the news over the time we were gone included a Christmas Day strike somewhere near Nigeria, which I guess the basis was for, I believe, uranium or something like that. Yeah, it's funny. I heard somebody say on a TV show earlier that uranium is the vibranium of the Black Panther. I'm like, damn. So now I see what's going on. Just trying to hit the motherland off and just rip it off once again. Wasn't taking people capital enough back in the day. Now you got to take the natural resources. Man, I've been holding that in, y'all, for the longest time since we had our hiatus. Time to recharge the batteries and then really get ready for like spring and summer sports. Baseball right around the corner. You can follow me on MLBbro.com. We can crank that up. I don't know how you, at this point on paper, unless the Dodgers are totally obliterated by injuries, how can you not go back with them? Again, my caveat is always going to be when you come back from an extremely long series. I mean, they're barely going to have 100 days off if they have that many. Now, think about that for a second on some baseball level. You play 162 games over the course of like 6 months just to get to the playoffs. And then if you go to the playoffs, you're looking at another 20, 25 games, depending on how you do in the playoffs. You're playing the best of the best, so you don't necessarily figure to have short series, except the first one. And there's a lot of extra wear and tear on the body. So as we count down towards baseball, on paper and with the resources that the Dodgers have, you could really see them as a team worthy of a three-peat. But you just wonder if you don't have as many days off, right, as you have to play games, when do the bodies start breaking down? I mean, think about it. You play 162 games. I think if the World Series ended in mid-November at the latest, okay, so 45 days from there would be January. And then you figure early February, around late March, I should say, late February is when everybody's in camp. And that's just, to me, something that I think that's a quandary baseball is going to have to face. You've got extra layers of playoffs, which is good for the game, but is it good for players' bodies? Which brings to mind that regional thing that everybody's talking about. We're trying to consolidate teams in certain areas. I'm not feeling that per se, but the notion of extended postseason after a 162-game schedule, and unless your team is booted in the playoffs, you really don't get a vacation. You get I guess the word I'm looking for. But if you're a team that's, let's be frank, a scrub team, a team who doesn't make the playoff, you should be rested and refreshed and ready to kick ass. So those are the interesting perspectives that I have on this Dodgers dynasty. We'll talk more about that throughout the course of the season. 3 in a row is a certain standard that once you do it, you've left no doubt. I don't see how, and I'm on that bandwagon already, I don't see how any self-respecting baseball writer in America has not already penciled Dave Roberts in for the Hall of Fame. That we're watching greatness with the Dodgers manager, boys and girls. Appreciate it. I'm hoping that, in 30 years or so, there'll be another kid that comes on like Professor G that will chronicle him like we do on Black in the Day on MLBbro.com. Anyway, I'm Professor G. Mark Ray. We rock on with the OG Sports Rap. And I'm going to get away from sports for a second because I had to get some, you know how it is. You take the time off that you have, and rarely, if ever, do I get down time. I mean, straight up, you ain't got nothing to worry about. There's not a deadline. There's not a game coming up. You can just chill. So I figure, all right, it's time. Since I've been running up and down the road, you got to get the routine maintenance to your car. Okay, routine maintenance. Okay, now, moral to the story now is when there's routine maintenance, don't go to the dealer. Okay, but and me being lazy, there's a dealer for the company that makes my car, and I'm not going to give them a free plug because, I'm paying the note and you're not hooking us up for free advertising, right? But let's just say that those of you who have been enjoying my niece Mia's promo that she's doing with me, which is airing here on the network right now, the company who makes my vehicle rhymes with Mia. Okay? Let's just leave it at that. So I go to like the establishment, and first and foremost, ladies, this isn't particularly for you. Routine maintenance has to be done somewhere other than the dealership. And I say that because you go in there, you're expecting, you want to get spark plugs changed, right? Fluids changed, oils changed. You want your brakes to be tightened up. You know your suspension is working, and you want to get out of there. And the thing that got me was like I ended up blowing a whole day, right, dealing with this, a whole freaking day for a tune-up and a oil change, which expanded out to a lot of other stuff. And okay, we're going to make it happen. But it's crazy how you go in there for one thing and it becomes an immediate upsell process. Don't tell me when I get there after we have scheduled a 9:30 a.m. appointment to tell me, well, you're not going to get out of here until about 5 o'clock. Well, what the hell is that? So I hate to be like this, y'all, but I'm sensing that if we could get my car fixed in 3 hours with the use of AI, I'm for using AI and forget the mechanic. Okay? Let's be clear about that. Let the AI do the diagnostic. Let the AI come up with the estimate. Let AI know what you're going to take care of that day, and we keep it moving. So I'm thinking, okay, cool. And again, it's not the price, it's just the principle here. So I'm thinking that I'm just going to get the tune-up and the oil change, right? Oh, no. We have to take this compartment off, and you need these spark plugs. Okay, cool. We'll add to that. There's these things that are going on, some kind of bearings with the brake. Okay, we're going to do that. There was a manufacturer recall. Okay. Some suspension thing. We got to get that fixed, but it's a manufacturer recall, and I have a warranty. Okay. Well, you know what your warranty, you're going to have to pay your copay. Okay, that's fine. Okay. We can't get the part today. We're going to have to keep your car overnight, maybe over the weekend. Do I get a, weekend car? No. Okay. You're not keeping my car, right? I'm telling you how this worked out. So again, I went in there expecting to pay, I don't know, somewhere between $200 and $700 maybe to get the, car up to speed from you, so to speak. All right. I get the estimate, right? It's like $25,000. I'm like, damn, what are you doing here? Hey, you're kidding me, right? Oh, no. What are you going to do here? I think $500. Really? Well, if you get everything done today. Whoa, wait a minute. I came in here to get a tune-up and oil change, and you're going to try to upsell me to get the suspension bar. I'm like, all right. No, it's not working, right? Especially when I have and again, not to be giving anybody any free publicity, but I got a, factory warranty, dealer warranty from a dealership that rhymes with Lars Sachs, okay? Right. So I go over there, and I'm like, right, I got to pay this $1,600. I'm going to have most of the stuff that's done. I'm going to go get the suspension thing. We good. I wasn't expecting to come out of Christmas like that, but you need to keep your car moving, and you do what you got to do in order to get the job done. Famous last words from a coach, right? I don't know what you got to do, but whatever it is that you said you was going to do, let you know what you got to get past, and we'll clean your car. You get a vacuum down. I got out. Car gone all day, overspent the budget, had to take shuttle services back and forth to get the car. And on top of that, when I get it, it's still filthy. Now, again, I'm not expecting you to give me a top shelf wash treatment. But I mean, if I go out to the dealership where I got it from and then go to the make a model place where I didn't get it from, I would have had a fixed car probably for about the same amount of repairs that we had, right? But at least they would have done the common courtesy, decency, and respect to clean the car out for you. And the sad part about it was this was a dealership in my neck of the woods. People who look like me, and You're going to upsell somebody and then not give them customer service? Come on, man. It makes it real difficult when you spend, because money is not black and white. Money is green. And when you got enough green, you got choices you can make. And the choice after this one, when you're trying to patronize a organization that reps in your community, and this is for black business people. Don't be thinking that you just got to pass on absence for customer service, courtesy, decency, and respect because you're a black business person. No, it don't get down like that. So I will be peaceful and nonviolent, and in my demonstration, I won't be using them again. How about that? You've just earned civic knowledge, courtesy of Professor G. Because we all we got on OG Sports Rap here on the network.